If I were to ask you, what is WoW's scariest zone, you'd probably have a few answers. Maybe it's Duskwood, especially the classic version, with the Worgen, the choking atmosphere, and that one serial killer questline. Or maybe it's the modern version of the Hillsbrad foothills, where a mad scientist is literally planting humans in the ground like crops, and you get to save them by either digging them up or smashing their heads in. And later on, you're forced to kill an abomination that's stitched together from 3 living, tortured humans. Or perhaps it's the infamous Karazhan crypts, where sinners are chained beneath the water, forcefully drowned, and then disrespectfully tossed into mass graves to rot beneath the earth. All of these zones are disturbing in their own ways, but there's one place that was never meant to be seen, a zone that Blizzard created and then buried. It's the home of the Karazhan crypts, Deadwind Pass. But not the one that we know today, or even from days past. I'm talking about the unreleased version that just might have been WoW's darkest, most sinister zone. There are actually 6 versions of Deadwind Pass that are accessible today, if you know where to look and how to look. We're going to look at 5 of them, as 2 of them are nearly identical duplicates. And 3 out of those 5 versions show us old versions of the zone that we never actually got to play through ourselves. And though they're pretty barren, they still hold clues which paint a very different vision of the zone. And it's not just about the Karazhan crypts. Over time, along with most of World of Warcraft, the many versions of Deadwind Pass got tamer, and a lot of the disturbing imagery and content was removed or replaced. Let's start with modern WoW and then work our way backwards in time. Modern Deadwind Pass is still a spooky zone, have no doubt. The whole zone is painted in this dull, lifeless gray. The eerie soundtrack hums low in the background among ambient whispers and skittering sounds. Spiders hang from wretched, rocky outcroppings, carrion birds circle above, and ogre camps dot the landscape. Towards the bottom of the zone stands the Tower of Karazhan, proud and alien amongst its harsh surroundings. Off to the side of the tower lies the Karazhan crypts, extending deep underground, which can now be openly explored. At the tower, though, the modern WoW sensibilities return and the spookiness dwindles. Arcane orbs fly through the sky, the Kirin mages stand guard with Khadgar, and the purple, almost cartoonish modern art style of arcane magic is here, and it reminds me that I'm in modern WoW. So let's step back in time to classic WoW. While the classic WoW version of Deadwind Pass may look mostly the same, it feels very different. Remember, this was a time before flying mounts, so you couldn't just soar over the zone, you'd have to trek through it. The oppressing rocky overhangs and thin bridges spanning over large drops are more impactful, as I can't just mount up if I fall and then fly out. If you do wind up falling, it's a very long, lonely walk down before you can even attempt to make it out again. The actual landscape itself is much more hostile here. The zone is also lonelier. The hanging spiders are gone, as are the random wandering ghosts, but the hanging corpses remain. The ogres are here too, but they aren't fighting back against the wildlife. They're just sitting, as if waiting. It feels more dead. The Kirin mages remain, but they don't look cartoonish. They aren't guarded by floaty, arcane eyes. They also seem to be in some sort of eerie stasis. They're few in number, hiding out. It feels like they're hunkering down. The Karazhan crypts exist here too, behind a locked gate that you can clip through. Or in Season of Discovery, this was actually turned into a wonderful dungeon, in my opinion. But as many people may know, this actually used to be part of the original Karazhan raid, scrapped before the game was ever released. So let's look even further back, before release, at a version that few have ever seen. If you've ever done the Karazhan raid, either new or old, you've actually been in this version of Deadwind Pass, and maybe you didn't realize it. The zone that the raid takes place inside of is actually an earlier version of Deadwind Pass. I mean, take a look and see, there are certain landmarks that are completely missing here. If we go to the Master's Terrace where the Netherbane boss spawns, we can actually look out over the zone and see that off to the west, where the Karazhan crypts would be, is just a random set of empty buildings. If we compare this directly to modern or even classic WoW from this same ledge, this is the view we see, with the crypts clearly visible. While this zone is dead, as all the action is inside the instance, there are still a few telltale signs that we see here from another time. The zone is even less open and filled out. It's even more liminal and limited. Of course, there are assets missing, but what I'm noticing is the actual terrain of the zone is different. The mountains just aren't quite the same. The pathways through the zone are different too. There just used to be less here. Less landmarks, less buildings, less life. Half created and forgotten. What happens when we strip away even more? If one is to enter the new version of Zul'Gurub in modern WoW in the northeast of Stranglethorn, they are actually also loading in an older version of Deadwind Pass. Whether this is actually further back in time than the previous version we just looked at, it's hard to tell. Shamans can use their farsight ability to skip their vision across the mountaintops and land in this completely barren version of Deadwind Pass. It's devoid of any loaded assets, but there are a few things of note here. First, there's this terribly scary smiley face on the floor. But in all seriousness, that is actually where the tower lies in the real zone. And off to the side of it, there's this little plot of land that's textured differently that hints that there was a building placed in that spot as well. And this is speculation, but to me this feels like the original entrance to the Karazhan crypts. The crypts themselves are absent in this version, and that whole section of buildings that we saw in the prior version, where the crypts eventually would be, are also gone. If these are the crypts then, they seem to have been placed in closer proximity to the tower, which makes sense if it was part of the original raid. As you can see, the closer we get to the beginning of this zone's history, the emptier it becomes. Even less is here. And that brings us to the final version, the one that changed how I see Deadwind Pass forever and showed me just how bleak and sinister this zone was really meant to be. If we are to enter the old Zul'Gurub raid, which is no longer accessible in modern WoW, and use the same out-of-bounds tricks or a shaman's farsight, we can see the oldest, most haunting version of Deadwind Pass that's still in the game today. Immediately, you're met with this open pit in the center of the zone, standing tall above everything else. The original Tower of Karazhan was meant to stand here, massive, oppressive, casting a shadow over the entire landscape. And it stands upon the tallest mountain, meaning no matter where you stand in this zone, you would be able to look up and see the tower looming over you. There's only one path to the tower, and it's the windiest and thinnest road that I've ever seen in World of Warcraft. The hostility of the sharp rocks and steep falls becomes exacerbated here. There are places where if you were to fall and survive, a hearthstone would be your only way out. There's no comfort here. Only twice upon this long, bleak road to the tower does the path become wide enough for two people to stand shoulder to shoulder. Perhaps a caravan or a campfire would have been placed here with players gathering around it, talking and waiting to enter the looming tower. To the east lies an open area across a stone bridge. It's close to where the ogres would be now, but only in a geographical sense. The land and terrain is different here too. But there's nothing. There's no caves, there's no signs of ogre camps. It's just open, dead fields with withering, dying trees and a looming tower in the distance. Perhaps this is where we'd enter from the eastern side, maybe from the Swamp of Sorrows? Speaking of entrances, I actually can't find any for this version of the zone. It clips out and ends before we get to see where all the entrances might be, but in this discovery, something else was found. The zone itself is more circular, the surrounding rock walls are higher, and the western entrance is completely missing. True isolation. Only one way in and one way out. Once you're deep inside, there's no escape. As I travel along the winding path, it forks only a few times, and all of these forked paths lead to the same place. A mildly grassy area is found up these steep, tiring paths, which are dusty and gray. Assets aren't loaded properly up here, but the story of this area is still clear. The soot of campfires remain, meat hooks hang in the tree and in the air, and fresh, bloody meat still hangs and swings from these hooks. Humanoid bones are strewn about next to fires and cauldrons. Cages lie empty. Imagine trekking up this lonely, winding road only to stumble into an ogre camp where they're only too excited to eat you, and the meat of your friends hangs from their hooks. This doesn't feel like Warcraft anymore. It feels like Diablo. So I thought, what might exist in this area now? Well, in Classic, this terrain still exists. It's just empty. There's no assets here at all. And the winding road up to it, well, the rest of the terrain is different, so naturally the road is gone. And the would-be path is just blocked with sharp rocks. Modern WoW really drives this point home, though. There are enemies here again in this area, but they're arcane elementals, and it's labeled as an abandoned Kirin Tor camp, so nothing spooky here at all. An abundance of trees is now here, which nearly obscures all view into this area. The second terraced level of this area is also blocked off by a rock, but you can still make out the terrain beneath it that would have been a pathway up. So once again, it's just sharp rocks shoved into place to cover up what could have been. In this second level, it used to house bones and cages, and it's just now empty. The darkness that could have been has been hidden away behind bright textures, new enemies, and rock walls. Today, Deadwind Pass is a mostly forgotten zone, hosting a couple old raids. It boasts arcane forces at work. The modern, cartoonish WoW art style that we all know softens the edges of what used to be an oppressive and suffocating zone. While there are hints of darker forces at work here, it feels more like a suggestion. We don't actually interact with that part, we just see it. But in a time long past, this zone was meant to be more. A single entrance and a path into a bleak zone that wound in on itself. A dark tower always looming over you in the distance, watching. Steep cliffs and sharp rocks bound to kill you or trap you if you fall, without mercy. The bones of your friends and the fallen bubbling away in cauldrons or cooking over ogre fires. Dead trees with faces on them, laying silent. Absolute silence stretching out across the zone, save for the wind blowing gray dust into your eyes and lungs. And beneath that tower lie the corpses of hundreds of sinners, drowned for crimes we do not know, thrown haplessly into mass graves, left to rot. Others tossed into pits, their bones left to pile up at the bottom. This was the Deadwind Pass we were meant to walk through, not just see. Honestly, I think this older version of Deadwind Pass feels more like it belongs to Diablo rather than it does Warcraft. And that's what makes it so fascinating to me, and that's why I think it's the scariest zone in World of Warcraft. Thanks for watching this far, and if you like content like this, the best way to let me know to make more of it is to subscribe and to leave a comment. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.